Good morning, homesteaders, gardeners, and cooks. My name is Jennifer. Welcome to Miles Away Farm. Thanks for joining me in my kitchen. Today we are making some buckwheat crepes. I love to bake, and I've been baking with different kinds of flours, trying out different things for many, many years. Buckwheat is an interesting alternative grain. It is what soba noodles are made out of, if you've ever had soba noodles. And it is a gluten-free grain, although it is very often combined with wheat in order to hold things together. And so soba noodles are usually made with buckwheat and wheat, which is unfortunate if you're gluten-free. But you can use it as a gluten-free flour alternative in different things, particularly if it's something that doesn't require a lot of gluten-type binding to stick together. And so crepes are a good option. This recipe comes from Cooks Illustrated, and it does contain a little bit of wheat flour. I am going to use the Cooks Illustrated recipe gluten-free flour as an alternative today, just because that's how I happen to be rolling right now. I kind of go back and forth. I don't have a gluten allergy. I don't have celiac. But as I get older, I find that it really does make my joints ache if I eat quite a bit of it. And as I get older, I really notice it when I have indulged in a lot of really lovely bread products, and then I am super achy the next day. So I try to avoid it off and on, depending on what my particular level of tolerance is and how I'm doing. So we're going to make buckwheat crepes, and it is going to include some beautiful farm fresh eggs, including a turkey egg. So our turkeys are laying like crazy right now. We have 4 hens. We did have 5 hens, and unfortunately one of them recently got probably eaten by a fox. She had a nest, and I think the fox found it and found her. But they are really wonderful eggs. I cannot eat waterfowl eggs, so I can't eat duck eggs. I've never tried a goose egg, but I'm assuming I would have the same issue. I have some kind of an allergy to a protein that's in those. And so even though I raise ducks, it's mostly for slug control. They don't really do well for me in terms of eating. We have lots of chicken eggs, of course, but this time of year we get turkey eggs, and they are super rich and wonderful, and I absolutely love them. So I'm looking forward to having this in my crepes today. And our buckwheat flour, of course, we need some good dairy, and then I'm going to make as a topping some peach compote. And so these peaches came from my tree last year, and I picked them a little bit early, and I was trying to blanch and take the skins off. And when you have peaches that aren't quite ripe, the skins do not slip when you blanch them to try to peel them. And so they were just incredibly frustrating, and I finally gave up because I had picked them too early, and it was the very beginning of the season, and I knew I had a lot more coming. So I just threw them in a bag, kind of like you would an apricot, left the skins on, and marked them as smoothie peaches, and I have been using them for that. But I was recently cleaning out a freezer and realized I had a couple of big bags of these, so we're going to use these as a topping for our crepes today. Let's get started. So nothing fancy here, just breaking up the chunks, adding a little bit of water. This is the corn syrup that I made out of corn cobs last year, and a touch of salt, a little bit of cinnamon, and I'm just going to put that on a back burner with a lid on it and let it very slowly simmer until everything is unfrozen, warmed up, and nice and tender. I am using a scale for this part. This is 3/4 of a cup of buckwheat flour, or 3 3/8 ounces. And then a 1/4 cup of our gluten-free all-purpose flour, touch of salt. Get that stirred in. Buckwheat has a nice nutty flavor that I really love in a pancake or a crepe. Weirdly, I'm not a fan of soba noodles. Here's our turkey egg. Turkey egg shells are very hard, so it's very hard to crack them and not end up with shells in your dish. And then the yolks tend to be quite firm as well. So 1 turkey egg, 2 chicken eggs. And then you can see here as you watch me try to whisk this together how difficult it is to whisk that yolk from that turkey egg. It tends to want to hold together, so it takes a little bit of effort. This whole recipe can be made in a blender, and I didn't think of that until I was looking at this footage, that that's usually how I do it. If that's the case, add your liquids to the blender first and then add the flour. That way it doesn't get all gummy at the bottom, but this works really well as a blender crepe. So adding in a total of 2 cups of milk. You could use alternative dairy here if you wanted to. I'm starting out with just a little bit, mostly to make sure that that egg yolk is fully whisked in before I add the rest. Get everything thoroughly mixed together. And this is a 1/4 cup of melted butter. And my butter did clump up a little bit here because the rest of my ingredients were pretty cold. I should have warmed that milk up in the microwave a little bit before I mixed it together, but it's fine. And anytime you're working with some gluten-free flour, it often does better when you give it a few minutes to hydrate. So I'm gonna let that sit for a bit, check on our compote. That's thawed out nicely. And I've got my nonstick skillet here over medium heat. I did add a little oil for the first crepe. It wasn't really necessary because of the nonstick, but it doesn't hurt. And a little goes a long way. I'm using about 1/3 of a cup, measuring cup here, swirling it in the pan. You want it to be thin, but not so thin that it's gonna just immediately tear. I'm time-lapsing this, so that was a minute or so cooking. Flipping it over. First one is like the first pancake. It's always a little funky. But you can see I've got some nice browning on the edges there. Round 2, getting the process a little more dialed in. And you can adjust your heat up or down as you go here. And usually by the 2nd or 3rd one, you've got it pretty dialed in. You're looking for that to dry out on the surface, a little bit of browning on the edges. If you've got crepes with wheat flour, you can usually pick them up and flip them with your fingers. But because this is buckwheat, I needed a spatula. So this one's a little bit scratch and dent, but not gonna hurt anything. And again, I'm time-lapsing this. Round 3, decided to add just a little bit more batter to make it slightly thicker so it wouldn't tear. And there's the whole process sped up, so you can see how that surface is drying out. A little bit of browning on the edges. Look at that, beautiful. 3rd time's the charm. Last one that I'll show you here, this recipe makes about 10. There's 5 times the speed, so you can see the surface drying out. You can also see my little bit of butter in there that stayed chunky. Gorgeous. And then I'm letting that cook just until the bottom starts to get spotty and it's cooked all the way through. Last one, a little smaller than the rest. So there you have it, tribe. Buckwheat crepes with homegrown peaches from last year, a little bit of sorghum syrup, and a touch of whipped cream, just for the thumbnail. Absolutely delicious, and this one is gluten-free. Give it a try. Thanks for watching, tribe. If you like this kind of content, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, leave me a comment. I have new content coming out every week.